Hello, my name is Jim Reeves, owner and head strength coach at the Athlete Zone in Mississauga, Ontario. This presentation is called The Slight Edge, Goaltenders, and deals with how the activities of a goaltender off of the ice can significantly influence their on-ice performance. I have been working in hockey at the major junior level since 1998 and have had a number of very successful goaltenders both work with me and for the teams I have been hired as a consultant. With that experience, I have seen and have tried many different exercises and approaches with these elite level goaltenders. I've coached 6 OHL Goaltenders of the Year recipients, and I've also seen the activities of many elite goalies who have not maximized their potential while playing at the same level. The purpose of this presentation is to pass along to you my experience and knowledge about the demands of the position you need to meet or exceed if you want to be a successful goaltender. For many athletes, they see players playing at the highest level and think how great it must be to be in their situation. You're playing in front of huge crowds, lots of fans love you, you're making big money, and you seem to have life in the palm of your hand. Maybe for some players this is true, but it isn't the norm, even at the highest level. For most players, it is a true grind to build and develop their game as they try to climb the ladder of professional hockey. Every decision along the way can have either a positive or negative effect on your performance. And in pro hockey, it is a performance-based business. Make no mistake about it. What have you done for me lately is the normal decision-making policy for many GMs and coaches. So every decision you make about how you're going to develop as a player can be very critical. Making the wrong decision or choice can bury your chances of being successful down the road, even if at the time it felt like the right or most popular thing to do. I'll give you an example of an NHL player I work with each summer who has had anything but an easy ride as he broke into the league over his first 3 years. Jamie McGinn was called up and sent down to and from the minors over 40 times in 3 seasons while playing with the San Jose Sharks. 17 times in 1 year alone. That's being told 17 times in 1 season, you're cut, pack your bags, with no guarantee of being called back up. It would have been easy for Jamie to mope around, lose focus on what his goals were, give up due to the frustration of the moment, or just make poor lifestyle decisions like stop working out or not following a good diet, or, deciding to spend his time elsewhere instead of focusing on his game. But no, he stayed true to what his dreams and goals were and kept the focus in his decision making in line with what he wanted to accomplish. Eventually, he established himself as an everyday player and continues to play at that level. But along the way, during those 3 years, it would have been very easy for a simple decision to negatively influence his chances of being successful. You as a player need to make the right choices for yourself in your game. Do not follow what your friends or what everybody else is doing, or let self-doubt dictate how you're going to continue to develop as a player. You need to make the right choices. The first thing you need as a goaltender is a growth mindset. You have to be positive, willing to work at your game, be honest and critical of your own play, and open to coaching and critique. Without that positive attitude, the ability to grow and adapt your game as you and the game in front of you changes will not be available to you. Your mental attitude is critical to your long-term success. Now I wanted to introduce to you the principle of the slight edge. The principle of the slight edge is a common term in business and personal development circles where talent and luck play a very small role in the success or failure of an individual. The same principle can be applied by goaltenders to their development. But first we have to understand how competitive the environment you are trying to succeed in really is. Between the 60 Canadian Hockey League teams in the CHL, 60 plus NCAA teams, there are about 1,200 players graduating out of these specific leagues alone every year, trying to find their spot in pro hockey. On the flip side, if you look at the NHL, only 990 players actually played a game in the NHL last year, and a little over 800 of those players played more than 10. Add to the 1,200 North American players graduating every year, all the European players available, and there's a lot of competition for very few spots in the NHL. That same level of competition holds true when you look at the number of players each year trying to make it into the OHL. You have over 5,300 AAA players across a 4-year age span looking to fill 440 roster spots every year. The competition is tough, the odds are stacked against you and everybody else, and so your decision making and the course you decide to take in your development will play a significant role in whether you make it to the next level or not. Let me give you an example of the principle of the slight edge in action. Matt Ryan is the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, a very high draft pick that has played 9 seasons in the NFL. You can break his career up on a personal level looking at his statistics in 3-year segments. In the first 3 years, he was really just learning to operate in the NFL, a faster environment where he had to improve his performance over his college play in order to become an everyday NFL quarterback. In the second 3-year segment, he is now an established veteran with significantly improved personal statistics, driving his passing success rate up to 65.7%. But he still isn't at the top of his game. In the off-season prior to 2014, Matt Ryan started to train on a device called the NeuroTracker. It is a computer-based program that forces the user to track multiple streams of information at the same time, tracking select colored balls on the screen at an ever-increasing rate of speed.
Something called pocket presence. Watch Matt Ryan. You get a little pressure inside. Take 2 shuffles to the left. Eyes downfield. Matt Ryan with the easy touchdown.
On screen, you can see here Dalton Pompey of the Toronto Blue Jays training in our facility on the NeuroTracker. He found that same slight edge that Matt Ryan had. And Matt Ryan created that slight edge over all the other quarterbacks in the NFL and allowed him to personally set new records in terms of yards per play and passing percentage. This personal success allowed him to lead his team all the way to the Super Bowl, losing that game in the dying minutes in an extremely exciting game. But it's the slight edge, adding training on the NeuroTracker, that took Matt Ryan from being a very good NFL quarterback and brought him up to a higher level, competing head-to-head against the greatest quarterback of all time on the biggest stage in pro sports. So what's your 1% edge? There are many areas that a goaltender needs to pay attention to. Listed here are some important decision-making points that goaltenders will face as they plan out their process of development. Each component listed here will play a part in your development, some more than others and at different times in your career. But don't make the mistake that being competent in one area at this point in time means you don't have to pay attention to it at all. For example, throughout minor hockey, you may have had an early growth spurt or hit puberty several years ahead of most of your age group, and so you developed physically at a faster and earlier rate than your competition. By being bigger and faster at an early age, you may have been able to get by in your play with minimal technical instruction and really only had to try hard a few times each game or practice in order to make the saves you needed to. But fast forward 3 years and now everybody moves fast. Shots are coming at you all the time throughout games and practices that are much more accurate, a faster velocity, and challenging to stop. If you had let your technical performance slide and your attention to detail and personal intensity are not strong parts of your mental game, then you're not operating with that 1% slight edge anymore. In fact, you're probably falling behind the pack as other goaltenders who are now able to match your physical performance do have that personal discipline, drive, and technical expertise that you have let slide due to your early physical advantage. And keep in mind, ignoring any one of these areas is still making a decision, and it will have ramifications on your performance in the future. Now, in terms of our presentation today, I want to focus on your off-ice exercise choices and how that can significantly help or hinder your development as a goalie. A lot of people have made the mistake that all exercises are created equal and that by doing exercise you are automatically getting better. Nothing could be further from the truth. The exercises you choose are going to train or affect certain areas of your body while other areas are not developed at all. For example, when you lift a weight with your upper body seated or lying on a bench, you will get stronger eventually in your upper body, but this will have little effect on your core or lower body. But if the goaltending position requires a very strong and powerful lower body and a core that is reactive and responsive to the demands of your position, then the bench press style of exercise is not necessarily the best choice for your development. It's important to understand that performing an exercise creates change in your body, but you have to be sure the change matches the demands of your sport and position. So going for a long run is great, jogging at a constant pace for 3 or 5 miles, but it won't help your body deal with the high level of waste products produced in your muscles while you're in the middle of a 5-on-3 penalty kill. You need to train for short periods of high intensity energy output if you want to continue to condition your body to be able to perform during those on-ice situations. Remember, hard work is hard work, but it doesn't guarantee results. You need to be smart about the choice of exercises you're performing to ensure your body is developing the required strength, stability, mobility, and conditioning that will benefit your play as a goaltender. And if you're training with a coach who's having you perform these types of exercises listed here, then I would really question that coach's understanding of the goaltending position. Training off the ice has evolved immensely over the last 20 years, and unfortunately there are many people still caught up in the physiology-based conditioning concepts of aerobics and developing a base aerobic level, and they really have not adapted their training style to match what the science of today tells us is the best way to train as a goaltender. You see, understanding the demands of the goaltending position is critical if you want to help an athlete improve their game and show their true talent level. But the wrong choice of exercise can have devastating effects on your game as well. For one thing, if your choice of exercise does not prevent you from correcting injury patterns that are common within goaltenders, then you are predisposing yourself to developing those same injuries. If you can't play due to pain or injury, then you are not improving as a goaltender. Also, if you lose range of motion, your explosive speed, or if you do not improve your lateral movement ability, then you are losing that 1% edge you are actually trying to gain. You could choose to focus your training on the wrong parts of your body, and the changes you create are not in line with what you need to perform on the ice. I see this every year at training camp for the various junior and OHL teams we test. Players who have not improved their vertical jump scores, lateral movement shuttles, or anaerobic conditioning results, and yet they've tripled their bench press scores and added a ton of size and body weight to their upper body. They spent all their time trying to improve in areas that have some level of importance, but totally neglected their lower body development. Yet the lower body development and movement skills should have been the primary area of focus for their training. The problem with choosing the wrong way to develop your game off the ice is that you are predisposing yourself to the one thing that will kill your game regardless of how good you are. You are predisposing yourself to fatigue. Make no mistake about it, fatigue kills skill. And if you are inefficient, if you lack specific movement skills, if you have to work at your peak capacity the entire time you're doing drills or during games, or if you just lack conditioning specific for the demands of a goaltending position, then fatigue will limit your ability really fast. And lastly, the final way you can train your way out of hockey is that you have to understand your competition may just have figured it all out and are training in a way that they will gain that slight edge, that 1% gain that you're still looking for. If you aren't getting better, then you're actually getting worse compared to your competition. Now, in terms of the purpose of training, first off, we want to prevent common injury patterns. My education led me to become a certified athletic therapist, and I have 22 years experience dealing with the injuries that goaltenders deal with on a regular basis. Whether it's low back issues, muscle strains in the groins, lower abdominals, issues with their hip joints, or overuse conditions in their knees, these injury patterns will creep into a goaltender's game and either limit their ability to play or force them to alter their playing style. We want to use our choice of exercises to help prevent these injury situations before they happen. The second goal of our training program is we want to increase your movement efficiency and coordination. We want to take a goaltender who is prone to using their quadriceps, which are the muscles on the front of their thighs. They're prone to using them too much. And we want to teach them how to use other muscle groups, like the glutes and hamstrings on the backside of the hips and legs, better and more efficiently to create the lateral power and push that they need while they are on the ice. The third purpose behind training our goaltenders is we need to improve their ability to perform in line with what is required by you as a goaltender itself. One of the athletes I trained during his playing career is Steve Valiquette, who played for the New York Rangers and now is a color commentator on the Rangers broadcast team. He has broken down where goals are scored from while on the ice and has coined the term Royal Road to describe a line running right down the center of the ice from one net to the other. He found the most effective way to score was when the puck crossed this line and a shot on net occurred within half a second. Overall, he found 76% of goals that were scored when the goaltender had less than half a second of sightline on the puck. And the biggest portion of these goals were based on plays that had the puck traveling laterally across the Royal Road for a shot on net. So, knowing this, we need to develop the lateral movement capacity of our goaltenders in line with what we know is the biggest threat to score. Lateral movement. We need to develop that lateral explosiveness in order to cover passes and shots that are coming off that Royal Road. If we know how to treat injuries that happen in goaltenders due to specific muscle pattern dysfunction, would it make sense to implement these same strategies with goalies before the injuries happen? Due to the goaltending posture and stance, goalies tend to develop a knee-dominant vertical squat pattern. They really emphasize the muscles on the front of the hips, or the front of the legs, called the quadriceps. And because of this, they lose the proper functioning of their glute muscles, the larger muscles of their butt. So over time, they prefer to use their quads only to create their lateral movements, or their movements about the crease. Yet we know the goalies that need to move laterally need to be explosive from the hips, not just the knees alone. So in order to overcome this movement preference, we need to wake up the glutes and then get the goalies to use their hips better and overcome what we call in the sports injury clinic, glute amnesia. This is where your nervous system forgets how to use the glutes properly and instead recruits other less effective muscles around the hips to try and create and control movement. By continually reinforcing the proper recruitment and firing the muscles of the hip, we can help a goalie maintain proper hip and lower body functioning, even though the goaltending position overemphasizes an inefficient posture and movement strategy. I want you to try something right now so that I can illustrate and explain the concept of vertical squatting versus hip-based squatting movements. Stand up and I want you to squat down by moving your knees as far forward as possible. Continue to squat down as low as possible while your knees slide out in front of you. You will notice how active the quads are on the front of your upper legs. Now tap your butt muscles and your hamstrings on the back of your upper thighs. See how much less active these muscles are? There's almost no activity in the glutes during this knee-dominant squat pattern. Now what I want you to do is stand back up, but when you squat, I want you to push your hips backwards as far as possible. You will see how if you tap your glutes and hamstring muscles now, how much more activity you have in them and how much less your quads need to contract or work to hold you in that hip-dominant movement pattern. You can see how when a goalie spends all their on-ice time in a knee-dominant posture, how their glutes can become untrained and the quads overdeveloped. You saw that activity level when you slid those knees forward. Yet we know if you want a strong and powerful lateral push, we need those lateral and posterior hip muscles active and able to function properly. So in our exercise selection and teaching, we need to have our athletes able to recruit and use those glutes and hamstrings and shut down the reliance on the quads alone. You can see in this video, the athlete is showing a great backward slide of the hips in this front squat, and by teaching our goaltenders to squat in this manner, we are ensuring the proper functioning of the hip and leg muscles. We also want to ensure that the hip joints have adequate range of motion and control for the various positions they must go into during the normal performance of their on-ice patterns. Every goalie knows they must stretch, but not all goalies understand they have 6 different directions in their hip joint alone that they must maintain adequate range of motion in. The book roll exercise forces the goalie to go through full internal and external rotation, full flexion and extension of the hip joints, and requires adequate adduction and abduction of the hip, with any slight restriction in any of these directions not allowing the athlete to perform this exercise fully. It's a great multi-directional range of motion exercise for the hip joint. It's pretty challenging, and it's actually pretty fun to do. We know now that we need to keep the glutes active and engaged, as this helps the goaltender to maintain an economy of motion and produce efficient movement skills. Illustrated here are both a double leg and a single leg version of an exercise that emphasizes the recruitment and strengthening of the glutes in isolation. Again, if we know ahead of time why the hips and legs of goalies become dysfunctional, exercises like these performed in their program are a preemptive way of keeping a goalie's hips functioning normally and allowing the goaltender to be as powerful, stable, and able to handle their on-ice workload with ease. And we know how important developing stability and strength in the lateral plane can be for a goalie. Goalie coaches and scouts and parents, they talk about core exercises all the time, but a lot of times they don't really understand your core is a three-dimensional structure. You don't just need to develop the front side of your body, you actually need to develop the back and the lateral aspect of it as well. So the following two exercises show how we can develop a goalie's core and lateral hip musculature and keep these areas as strong and stable as possible. It's important to have strong legs and strong lower body, but you need to have your core able to control and handle the increased strength and power you can produce with that lower body. Otherwise, the mismatch in strength and control offered by the core will set up specific areas of your body to overuse or an actual direct injury. So we want to make sure your core is able to control the power and the forces your legs are going to be able to create as you focus on making them stronger. And we can't forget about the smaller muscles around the hip joint. These muscles guide motion at the joint level and allow the larger muscles to focus on moving your body through space. Remember, the hip joint is actually a ball sitting inside a socket. The ball needs to stay at a certain position inside the socket, or else impingement and problems with the actual hip joint will occur. So it's important to have those smaller muscles strong and operating through a full range of motion so that the extreme range of motion that the goaltender's hip have to move through do not injure the structures of the actual joint surface. Smaller muscles around the joint, called hip intrinsic muscles, guide and control this joint motion at high speeds, and they reduce the likelihood of damage to the joint structures themselves. That's why training their proper functioning and keeping them strong and active are so important to the goaltender. Again, Steve Valiquette brought to our attention the idea of the Royal Road. He showed through analyzing all the scoring in the NHL in 1 year how 30% of shots that come off of plays that cross the Royal Road end up in the back of the net. As a goalie, obviously we want to try and stop those. So we need to be able to cover a huge lateral distance if you tend to play out from your post to cut down on the shooting angles and have a better chance of stopping these plays that cross the Royal Road. If I came to you and said, hey, if you develop one aspect of your game, you've got a better chance of stopping 30% of the shots that go in. You'd obviously want to take that development, right? So you have about 10 to 12 feet of coverage or more, depending on how far out from your posts you are, that you have to get across in order to get a piece of your body in front of those pucks. Also, keep in mind most of your game is horizontal movement across the crease, yet the stance you start from is one in which emphasizes vertical loading. It's like setting your muscles up for movement in one plane of motion, but then exploding in a completely different plane of motion in a split second. So you need to develop your lateral movement ability to make sure this is a strength within your movement skills. And another goaltending specific requirement is the ability for you to separate motion of your upper and lower body. For example, you drop into the butterfly and move your blocker up to stop a high shot, but the shot is tipped low towards your pads. If you have the ability to maintain the butterfly, you make the stop because your legs haven't moved. But if you need to move your legs in order to move your blocker towards the original trajectory of the puck, your 5-hole will open up and the puck is tipped down through your pads. Another example is keeping your gloves up and stick on the ice while you T-push across the crease. If you need to swing your arms to create this motions, your gloves will drop and your stick comes up off the ice. This is an ineffective way to move around your crease as your gloves are constantly in and out of position. You need to be able to control your arms, keeping them silent while your legs aggressively move you about the crease and you follow the play in front of you. Most strength coaches will have you squat or deadlift in your programming, and although my preference is to develop double leg strength using the trap bar deadlift exercise, as a goaltender you need to ensure your lower body development includes a healthy dose of single and lateral plane emphasis. Here are two examples of exercises that develop either a lateral push or the lateral pull movement pattern to strengthen the muscles of the hips and upper legs. These two exercises directly translate into building the strength you need to move laterally with ease. The lateral lunge improves your lateral push strength, and the tubing-resisted slideboard squat will strengthen the groin and hip muscles to create an even distribution of strength throughout the hip complex. Illustrated here is a Boisu lateral bound, where we transition our goaltenders from not just creating strength, but now harnessing that strength and starting to create powerful lateral movements. There are two aspects to this exercise which makes it valuable to a goalie. One obviously is the lateral takeoff, but most people miss out on the lateral deceleration skills developed as well, as the athlete cushions the landing and absorbs the lateral momentum of their body. Then we look at creating a lateral, powerful push through a series of lateral hurdle hops. Again, you can see how all the exercises being selected are single leg variations, developing power and performance consistent with the demands you as a goalie will need on the ice. It's easy to forget, goalies are athletes too, and their position requires a lot of athleticism in order to truly maximize their performance. You look at the top goalies in the NHL today, and they are not robots and they are not shot blockers. They are athletic, coordinated, powerful athletes who can give and take away opportunities in a split second. They have lightning fast movement skills in the lateral plane, moving from one side of the crease to the other to shut the door down on potential scoring opportunities. A great way to polish those lateral movement skills is to actually practice and refine them in a training environment. The 3-step shuttle is a great example of how to practice and refine these lateral movement skills and make them a strength within your physical performance skills. The final aspect of developing a goaltender is to ensure the stance and posture they work from is as efficient and strong as possible. Lots of goalies try to get into a proper posture, but soon fatigue and they drift out of the position and into whatever position they can hold for the remainder of the drill or series of plays while they're on the ice. What we want to do in a training environment is develop a good solid posture and base position to work from, so that fatigue does not affect your positioning and skilled performance. The following 2 exercises allow the goaltender to develop their deep stance and posture and build their positioning from the ground up. As they fatigue and their shoulders drop forward, they can rise up into a tall position or they lose the straight back posture. We as coaches can remind them, and the athlete is able to self-monitor their posture throughout the drill simply by putting themselves in front of a mirror. As we provoke postural fatigue in the exercises, corrections are made, and over time, the goaltenders build the strength, stability, and endurance to hold a proper goaltending stance as long as they need. So there you have it. I've illustrated for you the process of developing your 1% slight edge in terms of your off-ice development. The idea of reducing the likelihood of injury, of creating efficiency and coordination in your movement skills and body control, and the ability to train you for the demands of your position are the cornerstones of development as a goaltender. If you want to become a world-class goalie, you can't train like everyone else. You need to train specifically for your position, and remember, almost all the people you encounter on your journey to the highest level possible will never actually achieve their dreams. So if you want to achieve yours, make sure you are creating that 1% slight advantage for yourself and put yourself in a situation to succeed by working with somebody who knows how to get you there. There's nothing wrong with being focused and driven to succeed. I work with goalies like that all the time. If you have any questions or further, would like to investigate training for a goalie any further, I would love to hear from you. If you need help with taking your game to the next level, I can help you. If you need help with specific injuries or performance goals, let me know. Again, I can help you. You can reach me at jimreeves@athletezone.ca or call me at 905-602-5510 to set up a time to meet. We can go through an individual performance evaluation and functional movement screen to see how you move and what needs to be your training focus. And then we can set up a training schedule and program to get you to those performance goals. Thanks again for watching this video, and I wish you the best in your efforts to become the goaltender you've always dreamed of. Take care.